So going on with the Dickens novel Martin Chuzzlewit, here's the character I think is the true hero of the novel, though little digs are put in from time to time about him being the hero, and that's Tom Pinch. Tom Pinch is 35 years old when the novel opens. He's working for Mr. Pecksniff. He had been, we'll just say, an apprentice to Pecksniff at one point. So when he was probably 15 years old or so, it was his grandmother or his aunt. He had been orphaned, and I believe it was his grandmother took charge of him and his sister Ruth. Ruth, I think, is about 10 or 15 years younger than Tom. We don't get much of an explanation for that. But anyway, his grandma takes over and sends each of them to be trained. Ruth gets trained to be a governess, and Tom goes to the architect, Pecksniff. And Pecksniff takes advantage of Tom Pinch because he is a reliable guy. He is so nice to everybody. Tom Pinch is so undeniably good that it creates a halo effect for Mr. Pecksniff. And part of the halo is coming from Tom Pinch implicitly believing in the conception of Pecksniff as Pecksniff sees himself. All of the other pupils, so other pupils come and go. We meet John Westlock, who is the most recent pupil, who is leaving at the beginning of the novel. And just like all of the prior pupils, and then we'll find young Martin Chuzzlewit, who is coming in to replace Westlock, all find out what a fraud Pecksniff is. He never designs anything. He never teaches anything. He just has the men go and draw elevations of Salisbury Cathedral. They're near Salisbury, England. I can't remember. I don't think you're given the name of the town. You just know it's a little town next to Salisbury. So everybody figures it out except Tom Pinch, and he so believes. He doesn't see it. But the big turn is when he discovers it. And this is when Mary Graham, who's the heroine of the novel, and of course very boring, even boring compared to Ruth, because Ruth at least has a job. And I'll talk about Ruth in a moment. She's been harassed by Pecksniff. Grabbing a hold of her waist and basically intimating, you're going to marry me, and if you don't accede to my desires to marry, he's not taking advantage of her without promising marriage, but he knows also he won't get old Martin's money without actually marrying her. And of course this upsets her, especially since he makes an explicit threat to young Martin Chuzzlewit saying, you can't tell old Martin about this because this may redound on young Martin, and choices have consequences. So she gets very upset and tells Tom Pinch all about this, at which point Tom's eyes are open because, of course, he's in love with Mary Graham. His sister Ruth later figures this out, and he does basically tell Mary Graham this too at one point. Now, this is why he's not the hero, he doesn't get the girl. But this is what's so funny. There is a point at which Ruth is kind of upset that young Martin's going to have Mary, and they were already engaged before Tom even met Mary or Martin, young Martin. And he basically says, I'm not a character in a novel, which was a cute little dig. If this were a character in a novel, you can get these fantastical outcomes, but let's be real. I'm 35 years old. He's very plain, and he's kind of ridiculous looking. He may be very nice, but young Martin is like 10 years younger than him, much better looking, and of course he's going to have the money. Though that's not really the consideration. She already has an attachment to young Martin. But the part that I really love about Tom Pinch, and once his eyes are open, you find out, he's not been a fool. He had just been fooled with this one thing. And what's really nice is he doesn't get soured by this thing that he had set up his life around. This was kind of like a belief that centered his life. And what happens to a lot of people when they get disillusioned for something like that, often they just get sour in general. And yeah, I've seen this happen. It could be religion. It could be, a politician. Never put your faith in politicians, geez. It could be a family member. It could be all sorts of things. Anyway, when he finds out he can't stay, Pecksniff also kicks him out, and there's a really delicious scene there. But what happens is Tom goes to London and finds his sister. She's a governess to basically nouveau riche, like some factory owner or something like that. So Tom Pinch visits his sister at the home where she's governess. So first, when he goes up, rings the doorbell, and the doorman comes up. He notes that the doorman is kind of rude about Ruth, because is Ruth Pinch, is Miss Pinch here? He's like, well, Miss Pinch is a governess. He's like, yes, I know, I'm her brother. May I see Ruth? Anyway, when he comes in, he notices his sister is in tears, and after which the mother and daughter of the house come in complaining that the daughter totally disrespects Ruth. Now, Ruth is not the one complaining about the disrespectful treatment. The mother is, and the father is. So the father comes in too. The daughter had called Ruth a beggarly thing, which was considered low talk. And it is low behavior. It's rude too. Of course, both the mother and the father show total contempt for the governess's position, and that's what's shown in general. And Dickens does make a comment. The problem of being a governess is in a real class system like the UK, like England. You have servant classes, and you'll see Mrs. Gamp and Mrs. Prigg, and they're pretty low, but they're not outright beggars, but they are amongst drunks. Different levels of education, so she's better educated. Ruth is better educated than those servants, so she's kind of a cut above the servants, but she's definitely considered below the family she works for. Okay, so the father is new money. He's in the metal processing industry. I'm actually reading this off the thing. So he has full retinue of servants. He's got footmen. He's got guy on the door. He's got waiters serving table and all of that. So he treats all of his servants with contempt. So Tom is no weakling at this point. He's already suffered that he's been completely fooled by Pecksniff, and he's not going to let his sister be mistreated. So this is what he says. Okay, I speak without passion, but with extreme indignation and contempt for such a course of treatment, and for all who practice it, said Tom. Why, how can you, as an honest gentleman, profess displeasure or surprise at your daughter telling my sister she is something beggarly and humble, when you are forever telling her the same thing yourself in 50 plain, outspeaking ways, though not in words? And when your very porter and footman make the same delicate announcement to all comers, as to your suspicion and distrust of her, even of her word, if she is not above their reach, you have no right to employ her. No right, cried the brass and copper founder. Distinctly not, Tom answered. If you imagine that the payment of an annual sum of money gives it to you, you immensely exaggerate its power and value. Your money is the least part of your bargain in such a case. You may be punctual in that to half a second on the clock, and yet be bankrupt. I have nothing more to say, said Tom, much flushed and flustered now that it was over, except to crave permission to stand in your garden until my sister is ready. And that's pretty much his only breakout, as it were. But his point is, you may be paying people money. They're doing a service for you. Now, in the U.S., this has always been a problem, and I think I'll do it in the next video. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the American episodes of Martin Chuzzlewit, which are just plain embarrassing to everybody involved. But in any case, just going back to British class structure, which Dickens obviously understood pretty well, having been buffeted around by it a little bit himself, and we'll see that in David Copperfield, which is a semi-autobiography, but it kind of loses its autobiographical flavor in a lot of parts. But the one part it does hang is where David Copperfield feels like he is being pushed into a lower and lower class, and he can't stand it. And that happened to Dickens as a boy as well. But in any case, Tom does have his own kind of happy ending. No, he doesn't get the girl, but his sister gets married to John Westlock. He gets to live with John and Ruth. He's friends with old Martin and young Martin and Mary, and they have kids, and everybody names their kids after Tom. Um, and he plays the organ. That's the big thing, is he's an organist. He's a very good amateur organist. He plays in his local church, and they get an organ. So once, happily ever after happens, he has his organ and he gets to play to the next generation. And he is very happy indeed. So yay for Tom. He's the true hero. So everybody should remember that. He is the nicest character in the entire novel. Yeah.